Emily Tish Sussman is a Democratic strategist and also a former VP of campaigns for the Center for American Progress. And she does some commentary on MSNBC. Recently, she did some commentary on Bernie Sanders versus Elizabeth Warren, and it went viral for reasons you're about to realize right now. Take a look.
There's a ceiling. There is nowhere to go, but there is no up to go. And all of those support, I actually overheard someone saying that I thought was an interesting point, that basically at this point, if you are still supporting Sanders as opposed to Warren, it's kind of showing your sexism because she has more detailed plans and her plans have evolved. I thought it was an interesting point, and I think there may be something to it.
Yeah, I agree with all that. It's a good answer.
All right, I'm sure if she took time to sit down and read Bernie Sanders' policy proposals, including the over 100 pages of Medicare for All, or his plan for the Green New Deal. Green New Deal was a framework that he turned into actual legislation. I'm sure she looked into all of that, right? And by the way, look, this is so 2016. Like they can't come up with new stuff, and it unfortunately puts Elizabeth Warren in the same position as Hillary Clinton, and she's not Hillary Clinton. Yeah. Right? Like, yep. It's so ridiculous. And by the way, I mean, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a bio on Tish here, Sussman. Her family is incredibly wealthy, and they donated a lot of money to Hillary Clinton's campaign, about $21 million, I believe it was.
Wow, Jesus.
Yes. So her father is Donald Sussman. He gave $21 million to pro-Clinton super PAC Priorities USA.
So now, look, that's not a diss on her. She's born in the family. It is what it is, right? And she could make anything she wants of herself. We're not judging her based on her family. We're only giving you that as background for clearly a very pro-Hillary Clinton family. A lot of bad feelings left over from 2016. And that maybe that's her dad, maybe that's not her, but she worked at the Center for American Progress. Not everybody who worked there is establishment, but overall it was more of an establishment think tank. And then finally, just on her background, so if you're incredibly wealthy, you might not enjoy the deeper tax increases that Bernie Sanders has in store. So, which now finally gets to the substance of what she said. So I'm gonna get back to sexism in a second. But in terms of the policies, so if you can't tell the difference between Warren and Sanders' policies and you're not in politics, it's perfectly understandable because they're both progressives. They both have wonderfully progressive policies. And as a layman, you might say, good enough, they're both great progressives, right? I want big change, they both have big change, right? But if you're involved in politics and you're gonna go on a cable news show, then it's incumbent upon you to know the difference, and there is a significant difference.
Yes.
And Bernie's to the left of her on almost every single issue. Now you could say, hey, I don't want to be to the left of Elizabeth Warren. I like exactly where Warren is. There's nothing wrong with that opinion. And I like Warren a ton, as I get a lot of critique and criticism these days for how much I like Elizabeth Warren, etc. But there is a difference, and Bernie is to the left.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or you don't, right? There's no question about that. And if you notice, the second thing she said is she likes how Warren has evolved on issues. But a lot of people don't like politicians who evolve. Now, I do. I used to be a Republican. Elizabeth Warren used to be a Republican. We found the light, and now we're very, very progressive. But some people say, and this part is fair, Bernie's a rock, and he's been right on the right issues for 40 straight years. Today I saw a tweet online that I retweeted because it was so good. Bernie standing in front of a giant sign for equality for gay Americans back in 1986 as he's leading the rally. Okay, he almost got kicked out. The Burlington City Council apparently was livid with him back when he was mayor and he supported gay rights. He did that 30 years before the Democratic establishment was like, all right, fine, we'll let gay people get married because now they're donating a lot of money to us, right?
He's such a badass. And by the way, he never, and I think this is actually not a smart strategy, he never brags about those things. He never talks about it. He never talks about his activism decades ago, right? And look, the reason why I think it's important for him to talk about it is because at this part in our democracy, right? Like we're so used to candidates lying to us. We're so used to candidates telling us they're gonna do all these wonderful things for us, real hope and change. And then they turn around and they do the opposite or incremental change. Whereas Bernie Sanders has the receipts to prove it. That is, in my opinion, aside from his excellent policies, his strongest asset. His past, his history, the fact that he's fought for the same things over and over again.
Now, fighting the sexism charge, look, you have to realize how damaging it is when you throw it out in a context where you're clearly crying wolf. So here's a guy who's fought for women's rights, again, way before it was popular within even the Democratic Party. And the guy's got receipts on every single issue, okay? So you then lessen the charge when it's real. So I did a video recently, which Anna was ribbing me about, right? Like, where I was like, look, man, I've been talking to a lot of Uber drivers, and that you already should make fun of me for making political decisions or having anecdotes. Yeah, because of Uber drivers is like a Thomas Friedman thing to do. Anyway, where I was like, wow, sexism is way worse than I realized. Like, I realized it was bad, but I didn't realize it was this bad. Because how many people voted for Trump because they said they wouldn't vote for a broad, right? And so Democrats, some African Americans, etc. These are uncomfortable topics, but ones we have to explore because, as I said in the video, it could really hurt Elizabeth Warren. And it's not, and because I've heard people say, well, I don't know, she might lose to Donald Trump because she's a woman. And I know a lot of guys who voted against Hillary Clinton just because she was a woman, right? So don't do that, don't punish Elizabeth Warren for that. That's a terrible thing to think, and I don't want to perpetuate that. So there's some real sexism that could hurt Elizabeth Warren. But to say that the most liberal people in the country are the ones doing it is, one, totally made up. And you made it up out of whole cloth. And two, damaging to the cause of protecting women in politics and fighting for their rights, and specifically protecting and fighting for Elizabeth Warren. Because then you lose all credibility. And when you talk about it in the context of Republicans or anyone else doing it, they're like, oh yeah, these are the idiots who said Bernie Sanders wasn't liberal enough and was, no, it's in this case not even about Sanders, it's about Sanders voters.
Right, yeah.
The most liberal people on the planet are secretly sexist. Well, then nobody believes you, except people on MSNBC. Did you notice the panel reaction? Oh, what a good point. Yes, that's right.
Exactly. No one pushed back. I mean, MSNBC is also the same cable news channel that had someone sit on a panel and say that Bernie Sanders makes their skin crawl but doesn't know why. Like, is that the expert commentary and analysis people tune in to MSNBC for? It's ridiculous. And by the way, I mean, these accusations of sexism, weaponizing gender for political gain is disgusting, okay? Sussman doesn't even have the courage to admit that that's what she thinks, right? Oh, I heard this comment the other day and I agree with it, that that they were saying that if you support Bernie Sanders over Elizabeth Warren, no, that's what you think. At least own up to it and don't pretend like you're just relaying a message that someone else had uttered to you. And then secondly, one other thing, Bernie Sanders has more female supporters than male supporters. Okay, the numbers bear that out. So let's just quickly go to that graphic. So young women actually make up more of Bernie's base than men do. Polling shows the 2020 candidates' supporters aren't just Bernie bros. New findings from The Economist show that women under 45 make up a larger share of Bernie Sanders' base than do men in their same age group, contradicting a popular narrative that says the 2020 Democratic candidate supporters are overwhelmingly white and male, to the virtual exclusion of other groups.
So that would be an alternative fact that the mainstream media regurgitates without doing any research. In fact, doing the exact opposite of research. They're saying things that are not true. Why? Because they all instinctually don't like Bernie Sanders. So they just repeat it ad nauseum, even though it isn't true. By the way, today, a poll out, Bernie Sanders has searched the #1 in Nevada. Is everybody going crazy over that? Look, I really like Elizabeth Warren. Anybody who watches the show knows that, right? So I was excited when she searched the #1 above Joe Biden in Iowa and New Hampshire, and I made a big deal out of that, right? And at the time, so did all the rest of the press. When Joe Biden's leading, they were like, Joe Biden's leading, Joe Biden's leading. Elizabeth Warren's leading, everybody's like, Elizabeth Warren's leading, Elizabeth Warren's leading. And then articles, including today on Politico, Sanders is fading. Sanders goes to #1 in one of the first 4 states. Everybody's like, what?
Yeah,
what?
Exactly.
Right, and I guarantee you, if you bring it up to Nate Silver, he'll say, outlier, outlier. Whenever my favorite candidate is winning, that's a great poll. When Bernie Sanders is winning, outlier. Okay, last thing. So if it's Bernie Sanders supporters are sexist for not voting for Elizabeth Warren, are Joe Biden supporters sexist for not voting for Elizabeth Warren? Ooh, that's uncomfortable.
Are all voters anti-Semitic for not voting for Bernie Sanders? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, politicizing and weaponizing these types of things, whether it be gender or race or religion, whatever it is, it's lazy and it's lame, and it needlessly makes this primary more divisive than it needs to be.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.